My daughter gave me a gift worth more than everything else I owned. But the gleam of that incredibly expensive watch hid a darkness I never imagined could exist within her. It was my 72nd birthday, you see, a day that used to be filled with warmth and the smell of my husband's favorite cake. This year, though, it felt different. She didn't give me a present. She gave me a reminder of how small she thought I was and how grand she believed she had become. The air in my living room felt thick that day, heavy with unspoken things. This was the same room where my late husband and I built our life together, brick by brick, memory by memory. So much laughter, so many quiet evenings, so much of our simple, honest life had happened right here. Now, it felt like a stage, set for something I couldn't quite grasp. Sarah, my only daughter, walked in with her husband, and there was a new kind of distance in her eyes, a coldness I'd noticed growing over the years. She carried it was a polite smile, almost rehearsed, like something she wore for strangers. She handed me the box, right there in the heart of my home, a home filled with the sweat and toil of 50 years. My hands trembled just a little as I took it. It was heavy, and the velvet felt luxurious, almost alien, against my worn fingers. When I opened it, there it was, a watch, gold, gleaming, solid. It caught the light from the window, sparkling with a kind of harsh brilliance. It was beautiful, I suppose, if you measured beauty by price tags. Then she spoke, her voice clear and a little too loud in the quiet room. "Happy birthday, Mother. It's a Swiss brand, very exclusive. It costs a fortune, you know, as much as a brand new car, really." She said it almost casually, but her gaze lingered on me, then flicked to her husband, as if she was expecting some kind of applause. The words hit me like a physical blow. A car. My mind reeled. What kind of gift tells you its price before it tells you it's given with love? The humiliation was silent, a burning flush that crept up my neck, but I kept my face still. It wasn't just the weight of the gold on my wrist. It was the crushing weight of her words. The price wasn't a detail. It was the point. She wanted me to feel indebted, to understand the vast chasm she believed existed between us. She was putting me in my place, reminding me that I was just a poor, dependent mother, grateful for her crumbs of extravagant generosity. It made me feel small, insignificant, like a charity case in my own home. I looked at the watch, then at her, my daughter, the girl I had raised with love and scraped by for, making sure she always had what she needed. The girl whose hand I'd held through every scraped knee and every childhood fear. This woman, standing before me with that cold, assessing gaze, felt like a stranger. Where was the warmth? Where was the love I thought we shared? A gleam of that expensive gold seemed to reflect a darkness I never imagined could exist within her, a calculating edge that chilled me to the bone. My living room, this sacred space, became the stage for my humiliation. I knew she looked down on this house, on its simple furniture, its worn carpets, the memories that clung to every curtain. She saw it as old, outdated, a relic of a past she had clearly outgrown. But to me, it was everything. It was the echo of my life, the embodiment of my husband's hard work, my safe harbor. And now she was using it to diminish me, right here in its very heart. I forced a smile, a shaky thank you. But inside, something was shifting. A quiet storm was brewing. Little did she know, as she stood there, so grand and so distant, that this wasn't just a birthday gift. It was a line drawn, and in that moment, in this house she seemed to look down on, I felt something stir inside me, a deep, quiet understanding that things could never, ever be the same between us. I just didn't realize then how much that cold, golden watch would truly change everything, revealing a side of my little girl I prayed I would never see. That's me, you see, Eleanor. I'm 72 years old now, though some mornings, when I wake up and my joints ache, I feel 100. Other days, when the sun is bright and the roses in my garden are blooming, I feel like the young woman my husband fell in love with, full of dreams and simple hopes. I've been a widow for almost 10 years. 10 long, quiet years since Michael, my dear husband, passed away. He was the most wonderful man, my quiet strength, the one who made me feel safe and cherished. Losing him left a hole in my heart that time has smoothed over, but never truly filled. My whole life before Michael, and then alongside him, I was a seamstress. Not a fancy one, mind you. No big city boutiques. Just Eleanor, the lady down the street who could fix anything with a needle and thread. A torn hem, a stubborn zipper, a christening gown, even a prom dress for a nervous teenager. I put the same dedication, the same careful stitches, into every single piece. My fingers, even now, are calloused in places, from years of pushing needles, guiding fabrics. I can still close my eyes and feel the smooth glide of silk, the rough honesty of denim, the delicate lace of a wedding veil. It was honest work, good work. It gave me purpose, and it kept a warm roof over our heads. And that roof, well, it's this house. This very house I'm sitting in now has been my home for 50 years. Can you believe it? Half a century. It's not grand, not like Sarah's condo with its shining marble floors. It's a bit worn, a little faded in places, just like me. But every single corner is bursting with memories. The height marks on the kitchen door frame where Sarah grew, from a tiny toddler to a gangly teenager. The faint stain on the living room rug from a spilled cup of tea one Christmas. Michael laughing so hard he almost cried. His favorite armchair, right there by the window, where he'd sit reading his newspaper. The faint scent of his pipe tobacco still lingering in my mind sometimes. This house isn't just wood and plaster. It's the echo of my whole life, a living album of every joy and sorrow. I raised my only daughter, Sarah, right here within these walls. The gentle hum of my old Singer sewing machine was the constant soundtrack to her childhood. That and the smell of fresh cornbread baking in the late afternoon, usually just as she burst through the door from school, hungry and full of stories. Our life together was simple, yes. We didn't have much in the way of expensive things, but we never lacked for love, or so I believed then. A quiet, steady kind of love, woven into every meal, every story told at bedtime, every scraped knee I kissed better. Michael, my wonderful husband, he understood the importance of this house even more deeply than I did back then. He was such a wise man, always thinking ahead. He'd often tell me, his hand resting gently on mine, "Eleanor, this house is your fortress. I worked my whole life every single day, so you would have your own ground, your safe roof, your place, no matter what." And he made sure of it. He took such care to leave the deed, the official paper, saying this house was mine and only mine, solely in my name. He kept it tucked away safely in an old wooden box, the same one where I still keep Sarah's yellowed baptism photos and a lock of her baby hair. He said it was so I would never, ever depend on anyone's goodwill. Never have to ask permission to simply be in my own home. For the longest time, I thought my greatest wealth wasn't this house or any money in the bank. No, it was my daughter, Sarah. Her sharp mind, her determination, her beautiful smile. I remember the day she got her university diploma, framed it with such pride, and put it on the wall in her old bedroom. And then her marriage to David, a man of means, as people like to say. He came from a well-to-do family, gave her the kind of life I could only dream of providing. I was so proud of her, honestly. So incredibly proud of the successful, grand life she had built for herself. Even if that life, her busy, glittering life, had slowly, steadily taken her further and further away from me. Further from our easy Sunday gatherings, our simple pot roast dinners, the kind of comfortable, chatty phone calls we used to have. The distance started subtly, like a tiny chill in the air I couldn't quite name. I told myself it was just part of growing up, part of her success, that a mother should only be happy for her child's achievements no matter what. But deep down, a tiny ache, a little knot of sadness, had begun to form in my chest. I thought I knew the true value of things back then. Love, family, a safe, familiar home. But time, it turns out, was preparing to teach me a much harder lesson. A lesson about the true worth of people and the real cost of what you think you have. It was a lesson I was about to learn, piece by painful piece, starting right after that birthday, right after that watch. It was a lesson I was about to learn, piece by painful piece, starting right after that birthday, right after that watch. Because you see, the changes, they had been coming for a long time. It wasn't just a sudden thing, this distance. It started slowly, almost imperceptibly, right after Sarah married David. David, her husband, a man from a world so different from ours, with all his big talk and fancy clothes. After she married him, my Sarah, my only daughter, started to change. It wasn't a dramatic shift at first, just little things. Her visits, they became rarer. Not every Sunday anymore. Then not even every month. And when she did call, those phone calls, they were increasingly short. Not like they used to be, full of chatter and laughter about her day. Now it was just quick updates, almost rushed. When she did come to the house, something felt different in the air. Her eyes, they wouldn't look at me first, or even at Michael's armchair. No, her gaze would sweep over my house, this home I cherished, with a strange, critical air. It was like she was tallying up everything she found old or worn. One time, she walked into the living room, paused, and looked at my curtains. They're the same ones I sewed myself, years ago, a pretty floral pattern. And she said, "Mother, do you still have those curtains?" Her voice, it wasn't harsh, but it held this mix of pity and disdain. like she was sorry for me, but also a little disgusted. It stung, you know? It made me feel like I was stuck in time, a relic of something she had clearly left behind. She would talk endlessly then about her travels to faraway places, her new car, the luxury condo she lived in, the one with the doorman and the views of the city. I tried, truly I tried to be happy for her, to smile and nod and say, "That's wonderful, dear." She no longer asked about my health or if my knees were bothering me. She didn't ask about my church friends, the ladies I'd known for decades, or how my roses in the garden were doing. No, the subject was always the same. Always money, always status, always her shiny, grand new life. It was as if my simple life, the one I had built with Michael, wasn't interesting enough to even mention. Coldness became the new routine. She'd promised to come for lunch on a Sunday, and I'd spend all morning cooking her favorite pot roast, setting the table with my best china. Then, at the last minute, a quick phone call, or sometimes just a text message. "Something came up, Mother. So sorry." And she'd cancel. She'd promise to call me back, to chat properly later, but the phone would remain silent. I'd sit there, looking at it, willing it to ring, but it never did. Each time the phone stayed silent, a little piece of my heart felt colder. I started to feel like an old piece of furniture in her life, something she kept out of obligation, perhaps because I was her mother, but something she clearly preferred to hide away, out of sight. My 72nd birthday was coming up then, just around the corner. And despite all the growing distance, all the coldness, all the unspoken judgment, I clung to that date like a lifeline. I hoped, truly hoped, that maybe, just maybe, that special day, that old tradition, might warm her heart again, that it might bring back my Sarah, the one who used to laugh and hold my hand and tell me she loved me. I wanted to believe that the girl I raised was still in there, somewhere. Behind that cold, distant gaze, I held on to that hope with everything I had. I clung to that hope with everything I had. And then my birthday arrived. Sarah and David, they arrived late, of course. No surprise there. The doorbell rang long after the time they said they'd be here, after I'd already put the last of the warming food back on the stove. There was no cake, not even a little bouquet of flowers. No long, comforting embrace that squeezed all the worry out of me. Just a small velvet box in Sarah's hand, clutched almost like a weapon. My living room, the one I'd imagined filled with laughter, felt hollow, waiting. She opened the box right there, in the same spot where she'd always opened her childhood gifts, eyes wide with excitement. But her eyes weren't wide now. They were cool, assessing. Inside the box, nestled on a silken cushion, was a gold watch. Shiny, heavy, glinting under the lights. Far too much for my simple wrist. It wasn't a choice, not a surprise to be delighted by. It was presented. "Happy birthday, Mother," she said, her voice clear and a little too loud, filling the quiet air. "It's a Swiss brand. Very exclusive. It costs a fortune, you know. As much as a compact car, really." She said it, and then she looked at David, her husband, a quick glance, as if she were seeking applause, or perhaps just confirmation that he approved of her display. I just stood there, holding that heavy box, I felt naked, exposed under her gaze, under David's polite, almost pitying nod. The gift wasn't for me, not really. It was an exhibition of their success, their power, their supposed generosity. It was meant to make me feel small, and it did. It landed in my heart with a dull thud, not the warmth of a gift, but the cold weight of an obligation. I put it on my wrist later, but it felt strange, oppressive, not like something that belonged to me. A few days later, I was at the grocery store, and who should I run into but Mrs. Henderson. She's a lovely woman, a little older than me, but full of life. She's also Sarah's mother-in-law, David's mother. We've been friends for years, long before our children ever met, meeting for coffee, sharing stories about our gardens. She's a lady as simple as I am, honest and kind. We were talking about this and that, and then she sighed, a little wistful. She lamented that her cherished little watch, a simple old silver one, had finally broken. It was a gift from my late husband, she said, her eyes soft with memory. I wore it every day. In that moment, I looked down at my own wrist, at that gold watch Sarah had given me. It felt cold and foreign, a constant reminder of that strange, uncomfortable birthday. It was an object, nothing more, a symbol of distance. And here was Mrs. Henderson, my dear friend, missing a small piece of her own past, a token of love. Without a second thought, truly, without even a flicker of hesitation, I took off the watch. The heavy gold slid from my wrist, and I held it out to her. "Mrs. Henderson," I said, looking into her kind, surprised eyes, "please, wear it in good health. To me, it's just an object. A friendship like ours, a true connection, that's worth more than all the gold in the world." She was so surprised. She almost teared up. She tried to refuse, but I insisted. It felt right. It felt like shedding a weight I hadn't realized I was carrying. My daughter's reaction came like thunder, though. She knew the same day. I don't know how. Maybe Mrs. Henderson mentioned it to David, or maybe Sarah saw it on her wrist. The phone rang, sharp and insistent, later that afternoon. I picked it up, expecting her usual rushed pleasantries, but her voice was pure ice. It cut through the line, cold and brittle. "How could you, Mother?" she started, without even a hello. "How could you give a gift I gave you to my mother-in-law? You did it to humiliate me, didn't you? To make me seem petty? This is just another one of your attempts to make me look bad in front of David's family, isn't it?" Before I could even gather my thoughts, before I could make a sound to defend myself, she screamed, a sharp, piercing sound that felt like it tore a hole right through me. "It's over, Mother. To me, you no longer exist." And then, just like that, she hung up. The line went silent. It was a silence deeper and colder than any I had ever known. A deafening silence that lingered, pressing down on me, confirming what her words had already promised. In that moment, as the dial tone hummed faintly in my ear, I knew with a chilling certainty that I had lost my daughter. Lost her forever. The line went silent. It was a silence deeper and colder than any I had ever known, a deafening silence that lingered, pressing down on me, confirming what her words had already promised. In that moment, as the dial tone hummed faintly in my ear, I knew with a chilling certainty that I had lost my daughter, like a deep winter lake that looks still on the surface but holds immense depth below. I slowly walked over to my old armchair, the one Michael loved so much, the same one where Sarah used to sit on my lap when she was just a little girl, her tiny arms wrapped tightly around my neck. I sank into its familiar embrace, and in that moment, as the last echo of her harsh words faded, I understood everything. The watch. It was never a gift, not truly. It was a weapon, a glittering, heavy weapon, meant to remind me of her power, of my supposed insignificance, of the debt she thought she was creating. And by giving it to Mrs. Henderson, by passing it on to someone who truly valued its sentimental meaning, I had, completely unintentionally, disarmed my own daughter. I had taken her grand gesture and turned it into a simple act of human kindness, stripping it of all its intended power. It was a strange feeling, this calm. Pain was still there, a dull ache beneath my ribs, but it was different now. It was no longer a consuming fire, but a smoldering ember, heating something new inside me, something resilient. After a while, when the quiet in the living room felt less like an absence and more like a presence, I got up. I walked slowly to my bedroom, to the old wooden box that held more than just papers and old photos. It was a treasure chest of my past, a quiet guardian of my future. I opened it gently, the wood creaking softly in protest, and there it was, the yellow deed to the house, my name, Eleanor, printed clearly, and beneath it, Michael's firm, familiar signature, now faded but still strong. I ran my fingers over the paper, feeling the faint ridges where the ink had pressed into the fibers. I remembered his words, spoken so many years ago, his voice warm and steady as he'd held me close. Your fortress, Eleanor, your safe harbor. He had worked his entire life so I would never have to depend on anyone, so I would always have my own ground, my own roof. He had seen something back then, something I hadn't. He had built this protection for me, for my independence. In that very moment, as my fingers touched that deed, the sharp pain of Sarah's rejection began to transform. It wasn't just sadness anymore. It was turning into a strength I didn't even know I had, a quiet, knowing strength. They thought I was just an ignorant old woman, easy to manipulate, easy to discard. They thought I didn't understand their world of money and status. But they forgot. They forgot who I was. They forgot who taught me to read the contracts of life, not just the legal kind, but the human kind too. The unspoken agreements, the hidden motives. I closed the wooden box, tucking the deed back inside, but a new resolve settled deep within me. I decided to do nothing, absolutely nothing. I would just observe. I would wait. I had a feeling, a deep intuition of what their next step would be. And I was right. They took that step exactly as I imagined they would. I just waited for them to make their move. My quiet waiting didn't last long. Not even a month, I think. Time felt strange then, stretched and compressed all at once. One sunny afternoon, there they were again, Sarah and David, at my front door. No prior call, no warning, just a cheerful knock, a little too loud. When I opened it, Sarah was smiling, a wide, bright smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. The same smile she wore on my birthday. David stood beside her, his hand resting lightly on her back, his expression equally practiced, almost sympathetic. They stepped inside, not bothering to wait for an invitation, as if they already owned the place. They sat in my living room, the very same one where she delivered her golden ultimatum. Sarah started talking, her voice smooth and deliberate, like someone reading from a script. "Mother," she began, leaning forward slightly, her hands clasped. "David and we've been talking. We've been thinking so much about you, about what's truly best for you." I just listened. I watched her, watched David, and I could feel the falseness in her voice, palpable in the air, almost heavy enough to touch. It felt like a thin veil, stretched over something cold and calculating. She continued, "This house, Mother, it's too much for you now. It's so big, so old, all the upkeep, the stairs, the garden. It's a lot, isn't it?" She paused, looking at me, expecting me to agree, to nod my head in weary resignation. I didn't. Then came the proposal, delivered with such practiced sincerity, it almost made me sick. "Why don't you sell it, Mother?" she suggested, her voice softening, as if it were a truly wonderful idea, a grand solution, "and move into an excellent retirement home we found. It's absolutely beautiful, with all the amenities. We'd pay for everything, of course. All your expenses, everything. You wouldn't have to worry about a thing." It sounded so generous, didn't it? So thoughtful. A beautiful retirement home, all expenses paid. But I wasn't deaf, and I wasn't a fool. I heard what she wasn't saying. "Get out. Get out of our way. Let us take what we want." The offer wasn't about my comfort. It was about their convenience. It was about clearing the path. I remained silent, my hands folded in my lap, my gaze steady on her face. They started coming more often after that. Not for coffee, not for a chat, and certainly not to see me. No, their visits became a campaign. They brought other people with them, men in crisp suits, carrying clipboards and tape measures. Architects, Sarah called them, pointing to the drawing she held, a sleek, modern structure, utterly out of place on my quiet street. Then there were the real estate agents, smiling too broadly, their eyes constantly flicking around my rooms, assessing, valuing. They walked through my yard, the garden Michael and I had nurtured for decades. They'd stride across the lawn, their expensive shoes sinking into the grass I tended so carefully, talking loudly right in front of me about development potential and market value. They pointed to the old oak tree, the one where Sarah used to play, and spoke of how it would need to be removed for the new construction. They talked about the land as if it were an empty lot, a blank canvas for their ambition, not a living, breathing part of my history. They had already sold my house in their heads. My past, my future, it was all just numbers, just profit. They didn't see the memories in the peeling paint, the echoes of laughter in the empty rooms. They saw only dollars, only opportunity. It was humiliating, sitting there, feeling invisible, while they dissected my home, piece by piece, right before my eyes. like I was already gone, already a ghost. The pressure mounted, a constant, suffocating weight. David started calling me every single day. Not Sarah, not my own daughter, but David. His voice on the phone was falsely gentle, dripping with concern that felt entirely fake. Mrs. Eleanor, he'd say, his tone almost pleading. Please don't make things difficult. Sarah is suffering a lot with this situation. Truly, if you just cooperate, if you just agree, everything will go back to normal. Cheap emotional blackmail. That's what it was. A desperate attempt to twist my love for Sarah into an instrument of my own eviction. He knew, they both knew, that my greatest weakness had always been my daughter. He was trying to use that bond against me, to make me believe I was hurting her by simply existing in my own home. Everything will go back to normal. What normal? I wondered. Their normal, where I was out of sight, out of mind, and the house was theirs to demolish and rebuild. They wanted me gone, out of the way. They wanted their hands on the money they imagined my property would bring. The pain of their betrayal, the sheer audacity of their scheme, had reached its limit. It was a suffocating pressure, a deep ache in my soul. I had remained silent, watched and waited, just as I had planned. But now, as their arrogance grew and their plans unfolded before me, I knew the time for waiting was over. It was time to act. It was time to remind them exactly who Eleanor was and what this fortress truly meant. The air was thick with their assumed victory, but beneath it, a quiet storm was about to break. The air was thick with their assumed victory, but beneath it, a quiet storm was about to break. I sat there after David's call, his words about Sarah's suffering echoing in the quiet of my home, and a new clarity settled over me. This wasn't just about my house anymore. It was about my dignity. It was about standing firm on the ground Michael had secured for me. I decided it was time to speak my truth, not in anger, but with the quiet strength that had always been there, just beneath the surface. I picked up the phone and made a few calls. I scheduled a final conversation. I asked Sarah, David, and also Mrs. Henderson to come for coffee, here, in my living room. I didn't give a reason, just said there was something important I needed to discuss with all of them. They arrived promptly, a little earlier than usual even, looking expectant. Sarah had that same wide, confident smile, and David was right beside her, a smug look on his face. They walked in like they were already measuring the space for their grand plans. Sarah even carried a folder with her. Those real estate agent's papers. I just knew it. It was thick, full of numbers and agreements, no doubt. They thought it was the day of my surrender. They were so sure of it. I didn't offer a grand welcome. I just served coffee, in silence, letting the scent fill the room, letting the tension grow. My hands were steady as I poured, my gaze calm. I watched them, their confident smiles, the way Sarah settled into Michael's armchair as if it were hers to claim. They probably thought I was just stalling, bracing myself for the inevitable. After a few sips of coffee, when the silence felt almost heavy enough to press down on us, I turned my attention first to Mrs. Henderson. She looked a little nervous, perhaps sensing the shift in the air, but her eyes were kind. "My friend," I said, my voice soft but clear, "forgive me for involving you in this. The watch is yours. It was a gift from the heart, truly. I wanted you to know that." She nodded slowly, a small, grateful smile touching her lips, holding her cup a little tighter. It felt right, that small act of putting things in their proper place. Then I looked at my daughter and son-in-law. My gaze was steady, unwavering. Their confident smiles faltered just a little under my directness. "You want this house so badly, don't you?" I asked, my voice flat, devoid of emotion. "You're so eager to get rid of me from here, to sell it, to demolish it." Sarah opened her mouth to speak, perhaps to offer another rehearsed platitude, but I didn't let her. I reached for the old wooden box I had placed discreetly on the small side table next to me, the one where I kept Sarah's baby photos and Michael's cherished deed. I pulled out the yellowed paper, unfolded it carefully, and placed it right there on the coffee table between them and me. "The problem is," I said, my voice gaining a quiet firmness, "you're trying to sell something that doesn't belong to you." Their eyes widened. David leaned forward, a frown creasing his brow, trying to read the old document from across the table. Sarah's confident posture stiffened. I pointed to my name, clearly visible on the deed, just above Michael's faded signature. "This house," I stated, each word slow and deliberate, "is mine. It is solely in my name, and it is not for sale." Sarah's face, which had been so rosy with assumed victory, turned pale. The color drained from her cheeks, leaving her looking stark and a little lost. David's jaw tightened. They exchanged a quick, stunned glance. Their castle of cards, their grand plan for my property, had just received its first crack. But I wasn't finished. Not yet. I looked from the deed to them, then back to the crumpled real estate papers peeking from Sarah's folder. "And there's one more detail you seem to have forgotten," I continued, my voice now holding a quiet power I hadn't known I possessed. "The land where you built your luxury house, that grand place you're so proud of, it was part of this lot. My husband, Michael, he ceded that piece for you to live on, as a gesture of love, in an agreement of trust. He thought it would be a way for us to be close, to help you start your life." I paused, letting that sink in. Their faces were a mixture of disbelief and dawning horror. They had probably never even thought about it. So focused on the gleaming new, they'd forgotten the sturdy old foundation beneath it. "But on the property title," I finished, leaning forward slightly, my voice clear and firm, "legally, the ground you walk on, the ground your luxury home sits upon, it is still mine." The silence that settled in the room then wasn't the quiet of hurt. No, the game had truly changed. The air shifted, heavy with a new kind of understanding. The power had irrevocably shifted right here in my humble living room. The watch, the house, the land, they thought they had me cornered. But what they saw as a weakness, I had made into my strength. The game had truly changed. I didn't scream. I didn't shout. I didn't even raise my voice. The quiet strength that had settled over me was enough. I just looked at Sarah and David, their faces now stripped bare of their confident smiles, revealing a raw, ugly shock. I took a deep breath, the air in my own home feeling clean and clear again, and I said with the firmest voice I'd ever had, a voice that surprised even me. "The conversation is over. Please leave my house." They didn't argue. They couldn't. There was nothing left to say. They just stood up, slowly, awkwardly, like two ghosts suddenly aware they were haunting the wrong house. Sarah's face was still pale, her eyes darting around the room, no longer critical, but something akin to fear. David's jaw was clenched, his expression a mixture of anger and disbelief. They turned without saying a single word and walked out the door. The silence they left behind was not empty, but full of my own reclaimed peace. Mrs. Henderson, bless her heart, lingered for a moment. She looked at me with a mix of pity for the situation and something else, something like admiration, a silent acknowledgement of the strength she had just witnessed. She gave me a small, almost imperceptible nod, a quiet message of understanding, before she too followed them out. On the coffee table, nestled against the yellowed deed, the expensive gold watch sat forgotten, a discarded symbol of a battle they had lost. The quiet that followed was profound. It wasn't lonely. It was liberating. I felt light, as if a great weight I hadn't realized I was carrying had finally been lifted. The very next week, I knew what I needed to do. I hired a lawyer, not to take their house, not for revenge, and certainly not to start a new war. I just wanted to regularize the situation, to put things right, legally and officially. Michael had left this fortress to me, and I would protect it and the truth for us both. I worked with the lawyer to create a loan for use agreement. This meant I formally ceded the use of the land, the part their house was built on, back to them, but only while I am alive. It wasn't a gift, not truly. It was a clear legal boundary. It was for me, you see, to put things in order, to establish the boundaries that love, sadly, couldn't teach. It was a line drawn in the sand, etched in legal ink, a declaration that while I was still here, this land, this home, was under my protection. They never contacted me again after that. Not Sarah, not David. The silence remained, but now it was a chosen silence, a space of my own making, rather than a void of their making. I didn't grieve it the way I might have once. There was a quiet ache, yes, for the daughter I remembered, but it was overshadowed by a profound sense of rightness. My life returned to being simple, just as it always had been, but now it came with a deep, settled peace I hadn't felt in a very long time. The tension that had been a constant companion in my chest, the knot of worry and disappointment, had finally unwound. I went back to the garden, replanting the rose bushes that had been neglected during the storm, digging my hands into the rich earth, feeling connected again. I started sewing for the neighbors again, mending clothes, crafting little things, feeling the familiar rhythm of needle and thread, a small act of service that brought me quiet joy. Every afternoon, I would make a fresh pot of coffee and sit on my porch, watching the world go by. The child. That part of my life was gone, perhaps forever, but I regained something much, much more important. I regained my own self-respect, my strength, my quiet, steady, truthful self. And in that, I found a new kind of peace. My strength, my quiet, steady, truthful self. and in that I found a new kind of peace. Now the days pass by here, peaceful and full. I spend my afternoons out on the porch, just like I used to. The sun warms my face, and I watch the world go by on the street. Children riding bikes, neighbors chatting, the gentle rustle of leaves in the old oak tree. And as I sit here, watching, I can't help but think about everything that has happened. It's funny, isn't it? How life can twist and turn, showing you things you never expected to see, even in the people you thought you knew best. Sometimes, the people we love the most are the ones who forget to truly see us. They look at us, yes, but they don't see. They see us only for what we can offer, or what we represent to them. Maybe we're just an inconvenience to them, something to be managed. Or maybe we're a grand opportunity, a path to something they want. For me, with Sarah, I was just a mother, an old woman in an old house, a resource to be exploited, or perhaps simply a problem to be solved. I didn't see Eleanor, the seamstress, the wife, the woman who built a life with her own two hands, stitched with love and resilience. They saw only the potential of a property, the burden of a parent. It's a hard truth to swallow, that sometimes those closest to you can look right through you to something else. They forget that before we are mothers, grandmothers, or owners of anything, we are women with a history, with feelings that run deep, with a lifetime of experiences. We carry within us a story, a spirit, a quiet fire that doesn't dim just because we've reached a certain age. Our dignity, our sense of self, it's not tied to any expensive watch or any house's market value. It's woven into the fabric of our being, earned through years of living, loving, and learning. We've seen changes, weathered storms, and held on to truths that perhaps younger generations sometimes overlook in their rush to acquire. My dignity, my true worth, it was priceless. It could not be sold. And sometimes it feels like that dignity, that very core of who we are forced to protect it, to shield it, even from those who should be caring for it the most, from those we brought into this world with nothing but pure, unselfish love. That's a strange and painful lesson to learn, that you have to stand guard over your own self, even against your own flesh and blood. It's about respect, really. Respect for a life lived, for the wisdom that comes with years, for the simple, unglamorous value of a human being, regardless of their wealth or their status. Especially, I think, for us older folks. We're not always seen for who we are anymore, are we? Often we're just seen for what we have, or what we lack, or what we might become a burden. But we are still here. We still have thoughts, feelings, a quiet strength that can surprise even ourselves. And you? Have you ever felt that your worth was being measured by what you have and not by who you are? I've learned that peace isn't just about the absence of conflict. It's about the presence of self-respect. It's about knowing your boundaries and having the quiet courage to uphold them, even when it means facing uncomfortable truths about your own family. The pain, it was real. A deep wound that still aches sometimes, a quiet sorrow for what was lost. But that pain also forged something stronger inside me. It showed me that true wealth isn't in gold or grand houses, but in the unwavering belief in your own worth, in the quiet strength of your spirit. This house is my fortress, yes, but my true fortress is within. It is the peace I found by honoring myself, by standing firm on the ground of my own truth. It's a truth that sets you free, even when it means letting go of someone you thought you'd never live without. And you? Have you ever felt that your worth was being measured by what you have and not by who you are? That question, it lingers with me sometimes as I sit here. It's a question I had to answer for myself, not just in my mind, but deep in my heart, in the quiet truth of my own being. For so long, I had let my daughter's perception, her definition of success and value, color my own. I let her make me feel small, feel less than, because my life wasn't grand or glittering like hers. But the truth, I've learned, is that my worth was never hers to define. It was always mine to hold, to cherish, to protect. And that protection, that deep sense of self-respect, became my greatest treasure. The days now, they're truly mine again, not filled with anxious waiting for a call that wouldn't come, or dreading a visit that would only bring judgment. No, my mornings are for my garden. I still get out there, even if my knees protest a little. I feel the rich earth between my fingers as I tend to the rose bushes, the ones that had looked a little neglected during all the turmoil. They're blooming beautifully again. Each petal, each vibrant color feels like a little victory, a testament to care and resilience. I find such peace in it, watching life unfold, coaxing beauty from the soil. It's a simple joy, but it's a real one. It's honest. In the afternoons, the hum of my old sewing machine fills the house again. I've gone back to sewing for the neighbors, mending clothes, sometimes making little things for their grandchildren. The rhythm of the needle, the soft rustle of fabric, it's like a psalm, a familiar comfort that soothes my soul. It reminds me of Michael, of our life together, of the simple, honest work that built this home, brick by quiet brick. These hands, these old gnarled hands, they still have purpose. They still create. They still bring a little bit of comfort and connection to others. And that, I realize, is more valuable than any expensive brand name. And then, just as I told you, I sit on my porch every afternoon with a warm cup of coffee, or sometimes just a glass of iced tea when the weather is warm. I watch the street life, the children playing, their laughter ringing clear and unburdened. The mailman waving, the familiar faces of neighbors walking their dogs. It's a small world, my street, but it's real. It's alive. And I'm a part of it, not hidden away, not waiting for approval, but simply present. This house, this very spot where I sit, which they saw as an obstacle, as a burden, as just a piece of property to be torn down and replaced, it's returned to being what it always was. My fortress, my safe harbor, not just because of the deed or the legal papers, but because I truly reclaimed it in my heart and in my spirit. It's not just wood and plaster. It's a testament to Michael's love, to my own endurance, to the quiet strength that lives inside us all, if we only dare to find it. The pain of losing Sarah, the daughter I thought I knew, it's still there sometimes. A quiet ache, like an old scar. It might never completely go away, and that's okay, because that pain, in its own way, it also forged something stronger inside me. It showed me that true wealth isn't in gold or grand houses, or even in the unwavering approval of those closest to you. No, it's in the unwavering belief in your own worth. It's in the quiet courage to stand firm on your own truth, even when it means facing uncomfortable realities about your own family. It's a truth that sets you free, you see, even when it means letting go of someone you thought you'd never live without. I found a new kind of peace, a peace that comes from within, from honoring myself and the life I've built. This house is my fortress. Yes, but my truest fortress is within me. It is the peace I found by honoring myself, by standing firm on the ground of my own truth. And that, I've learned, is a peace that no one can ever take away. I share these stories, my stories, because I believe we all have them. Moments when we feel seen, and moments when we feel invisible. Moments of struggle, and moments of quiet triumph. And if you want to keep receiving real stories like this one, pay attention. YouTube might be unsubscribing you without warning. Confirm if you're still subscribed to the channel and activate the bell. It's a simple way for us to stay connected, to share these pieces of life, to remind each other that we are not alone in our journeys, in our search for dignity and peace. Because in the end, we all just want to be seen, truly seen for who we are.